Jai Shri Ram. When Hindus leave India and come to the United States or other Western countries, the question of how to inculcate Hinduness within their children is a difficult one to tackle. Oftentimes, no real plan is made for this beforehand, and instead, the parents just teach their kids whatever they feel like, and of course, speak to their kids in their language at home, raise them with their food, and so on. Indian parents generally think that this is sufficient in grounding their kids in a Hindu identity and value system. However, this is not at all the case. Where parents go wrong is that they fail to understand that being raised in the West and going to school in the West have strong homogenizing and assimilating effects on Hindu kids as well as kids of other foreign cultural origins. Along the same lines, they fail to understand how much of a grounding within Hindu culture that they received from sources other than their parents and families, such as friends, classmates, acquaintances, and possibly most importantly, the society at large. When you grow up here in the United States, your friends, classmates, teachers, acquaintances, and of course the society at large is totally foreign to your own culture for the most part. And so, having deeply Indian Hindu sensibilities, values, and a dharmic outlook on life can be quite difficult to cultivate, hold, and preserve within oneself. So I wanted to share some tips or ideas on how parents raising their kids in the West can go about making sure their kids imbibe Hindu identity, culture, and values. And I feel the need to make a disclaimer here again. I don't have kids. I don't intend to get married or have kids. So I know that a lot of people like to have this deep emotional reaction of whenever someone that does not have children says anything about raising children. But unlike people who were born in India, if we're going to get into this idea of anecdotal personal evidence again, unlike people who were born in India, I do have the experience of actually growing up in a totally foreign culture, which is the gist of what I'm talking about here, preserving one's culture and identity while actually being raised in your formative years in a foreign culture. Anyway, the first tip that I wanted to talk about is that you need to inculcate a sense of Hindu identity in your children first, which is to say, I am a Hindu, this is who I am, this is how I see myself. And this is key to do first because of two reasons. One, your kids will be bombarded with the idea that they're American and that being American isn't about being white or being black. It's this kind of pan-ethnic rainbow identity that anyone of any race and religion and ethnicity and so on can hold to. So that's one reason. Another reason is because they'll also be tempted to identify themselves as being quote-unquote Indian or Indian American. Now, for people who are actually from India, you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with calling yourself Indian? I would want my kids to be proud of being Indian, right? Now, what is wrong with this identity or this term is that Indian also encompasses Muslims, Christians, Khalistanis, secularists, self-hating Hindus, and also Ambedkarites. So all of these people who share obviously nothing of substance in common with us as far as worldview, values, and identity are also Indian, right? They also originate from India and they hold Indian passports before they come here and get citizenship in some other country. So Indian is not a meaningful way to identify yourself here in the US or other Western countries. I see the word Desi being used a lot to describe us, which is, of course, even less meaningful because that would also include the entire Indian subcontinent, not even just India. So, what I tend to see from these people that like to push this idea of being Desi here in America is that their idea of their culture is basically just pop culture. Things like eating samosa pakora, watching Bollywood music, listening to Bhangra music, and of course wearing, kurta pajama in the case of guys, or sari and ghagra choli and salwar kameez and stuff like that in the case of girls, taking pictures of themselves wearing these kinds of outfits, posting them on social media so that their white friends can see, how cultured, and in touch with their tradition and so on that they are, right? This kind of flighty, superficial connection with one's culture is what is what will naturally happen to second-generation Hindu kids here unless a proper sense of a deep, meaningful Hindu identity is inculcated in them first. Like any identity, this identity needs two traits. One, it must exclude from the identity people who should be outside of it. And two, conversely, it must include all of those who should be within it. The exclusion will take care of the problems I just listed, meaning that a Hindu identity would exclude Abrahamics, but it's important to remember that Hindu identity here also needs to be strong. It can't be one of these wishy-washy, oh, I'm proud to be Hindu, but all religions are the same, so it doesn't really mean anything kind of a thing that you hear from people quite a bit. And then secondly, the inclusion of all those who are part of the Hindu in-group is also crucially important for two reasons. One, if you're aligned towards Hindutva, which I'm assuming that everyone who watches my videos probably is, you're well aware of the fact that Hindus tend to have a very difficult time feeling a real sense of kinship, camaraderie, and oneness with Hindus who are from a different region or speak a different language. So that's something that needs to be overcome, as we all know. And when you're in this project of trying to purposely inculcate an identity within your children, it's something to tackle as well. And secondly, here in the West, there is an automatic reaction that people have that your native language forms your identity. Since European history has been so tied into this kind of nation-state, linguistic kind of a nationalism kind of an idea, where the identity of who you are is based on a common linguistic or ethnocentric kind of ethno-linguistic kind of an identity, So to sum up, in order to avoid the homogenizing, westernizing cultural factors that are affecting kids born and raised in the West by immigrant parents, the first step to take is to inculcate a Hindu identity within the children that is exclusive enough to leave out Abrahamics and others who disagree with our worldview, but inclusive enough to include Hindus from different regions and different mother tongues. Now, since this is the first of these kinds of videos about tips that I've given and so on and so forth, I do want to say that I know that what I've said in this video is very broad and general and may seem kind of vague right now. In subsequent videos, I'm going to talk more about very specific things that I've seen both from, growing up, the kind of values that my parents gave me, talking to other people who grew up like me that were not given these kinds of values, all of these different kinds of things, as well as, things outside of anecdotal evidence and personal experience that actually has to do with facts and trends across time and across cultures. So be on the lookout for that. That will come, and that will talk a lot more about kind of making your kids Indian in a way that is more than just symbolic. I mean, right now when I talked about identity could mean a lot of different things, even if it's deeply rooted. I mean, I think we have all, especially in the modern day when there's electoral politics, and all of these kinds of forces that kind of want to play up the idea of identity, even when the substance underlying that identity may not be strong or may actually be totally eroded away and only the identity is left. So that's definitely not what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk more about those specifics of actual substance in subsequent videos. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Jai Shri Ram.